this time we are going to begin the funeral services for David Robert Lanski. If you have a cell phone or a pager, I would ask and invite you to turn it off or make sure it's in the silent mode. And officiating today's services will be Rabbi Dror Chankin Gould and Cantor Rachel Brook from Anshe Emel.
We'll begin today by reciting Psalm 23.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני ראוי לו אכזר, בנודה שירביצני, על מנוחות ינהלני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני במגלי צדק, למען שמו. גם כי ילך בגיץ על מוות, לא ירא רק כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. תישן דב השמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה, אך טוב בחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי. ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
Together we can recite the 23rd Psalm. The words are in English in your handout. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We gather together today for the Levaya, the funeral of David Robert Lanski. A funeral in Hebrew is called Levaya. It means to walk with, to escort, to go beside. And so we are today honoring the mitzvah of Kvod HaMeid, of honoring the dead, by walking beside, walking with David in his final moments. David was carried with respect and love to his grave. He was escorted by his sons Steve and Aaron, and by his grandsons Idan and Adi and Ilan and Eitan, honoring him with family, just as he honored his family as the center of his life. And today we continue to honor David by hearing words of love and appreciation and gratitude from his family members who knew him best. And we'll begin by hearing from David's grandsons, from Idan and Adi.
He would have loved that I had to adjust that up. I had the privilege of making Papa a Papa. It was his first grandkid. And we were looking back at some of the pictures from those first 6-7 years that I had him all to myself. And you see how much he loved being a Papa. And he, in every picture, he's either smiling from ear to ear or he's giving me kind of the biggest bear hug. And I'm just this tiny Don. And it just enveloped me with all he had. When we moved to Chicago and Bubby and Papa were still in Florida, they would come visit us every now and again for a couple weeks. And I remember when Adi and Leah were first born and we just moved there, Papa was the one who actually taught me a lot about what it meant to be a bigger brother and what it meant to look out kind of for the rest of the family. You know, make sure everyone's fed, make sure they laugh at least a few times a day, don't tease them, let Adi win at basketball, blah, blah, blah. When I got into high school, I couldn't have been more excited that Bubby and Papa moved back to Chicago, to the suburbs near us. We used to have Shabbat dinner with them most weeks, and I became the Shabbat chauffeur. My papa liked to call me because he never really got the hang of Uber. But every week before and after Shabbat, it was me and Papa talking. Bubby was in the back looking out the window, and she would chime in every now and again. But it was me and Papa that got to just talk and update each other. And like I said before, he just loved being a Papa so much. He asked about every single grandkid. It was, Adi just made the basketball team. Yes, Leah's still dancing. I visited Elon at his special Friends Day, and here are some of the wonderful pictures we have. Yep, Eitan started playing soccer. Orly's actually developed a sense of humor quite like yours. Yep, Levy's got your red hair, and Liam's as smiley as ever. It wasn't just that he loved being a grandfather, he really loved being our grandfather, and I felt that every time. Another thing about Papa is he thought really deeply. You might not have always seen it, but he was an avid reader, outpacing even the most dedicated PhD student. He kept up on news, politics, and sports, even though he didn't really know how to use his phone necessarily. He always had the headlines before me somehow. He was in love with storytelling and story listening too, about his childhood, the family, the grandkids, whatever. Even if we wanted to make something up, he wanted to hear and kind of put it together in his arsenal of storytelling too. We would just pick each other's brains every week, and we would just see what came out. And I was thinking this Sunday night, the Bears had another horrible quarterbacking performance, and it seemed fitting, something that we could commiserate about next time we talk. Papa was also really, really, really funny, but not the funny that was just about, knowing good jokes and having good delivery. It came from really knowing people and being able to read a room. He knew what would make someone not only laugh, but feel good and feel seen. It was Leah. I have a pet alligator named Ollie, and yep, he's the only alligator known to man that's a vegetarian like you. Or Idan, you might not think so, but you did inherit my genes, only I grew this way and you grew that way. I remember in high school when we lost our championship basketball game, which was a big deal then, I ended up driving home with Papa. I'm not even sure it was intentional or on purpose. It's just kind of natural. There was something about being with him that not only gave you proportions in life, but it just made you feel happy and better. That's something that I was always drawn to about him. I really love Papa's voice and his laugh, and it's something I'm gonna miss a lot. He really was like the mensch of mensches, and it mattered to him that we, all of the grandkids, would be like that, nice, kind-hearted, and happy too. I love you a lot, Papa. Papa looked out for his family. I remember that as soon as he moved to Chicago, he immediately bought a Costco-sized box of tea bags and stevia in order to host my tea-obsessive father. I didn't have a pair of fancier shoes that fit me during my bar mitzvah season either. Luckily, this was the one time our shoe sizes overlapped, and he had the perfect double-wide size 8 for me to borrow. For Papa, it wasn't just about being nice or making sure we were taken care of, but it demonstrated how much Papa really cared about all of us. It may seem like a pair of shoes or some tea bags, but these are small tokens of Papa's larger love for his family. He thought about us constantly, and he loved us endlessly. As you might know, Papa really loved food. I think it was more than the food, but really about the people. Papa didn't sit at a table just to eat. He sat at a table to connect with the others sitting around the table. For example, the couple times we visited Bubby and Papa in Florida, we were greeted not only by the biggest smiles, but by enormous, and I mean enormous, platter of kosher deli meats. It was then that I met Papa, the personal trainer. He was the first person who taught me how to lift, lifting a fork from plate to mouth, plate to mouth. Once Bubby and Papa moved to Chicago, within 2 months of moving into their independent living place, Papa was unanimously elected as the president of the food committee, fighting for the most important causes like bigger appetizer sides, more scoops of ice cream, and lighter coffee mugs for residents. He was also the first food committee president to resign in protest. All of this is to say, food was one of the many ways Papa connected with others and looked out and gave to others. Papa was obsessed with sports, but even more so, he was obsessed with our sports. I remember that Papa had mixed feelings initially about the move to Chicago, but every time we talked, he beamed about the fact that he could come watch our sports games. And I remember I was only in middle school, and middle school basketball games are not that entertaining. Papa would sit there in the front row and always have his takeaways for us to chat about after the game. I just always felt that Papa really cared. And I should add that the one way we knew how much Papa loved sports was because it was always Bubby and Papa for everything. Meals, outings, holidays. But when it came to watching sports, Papa made an exception. Except, of course, when Bubby was interested in the crowd size or the cheerleader watching. I think Papa really loved his family. Anytime I would come visit him, he could not help but introduce me and show me off to all his friends. When I would pick him and Bubby up for dinner, he would be down ready and waiting in the lobby at least 30 minutes before I arrived, with or without Bubby, normally without. He would then walk outside as soon as I pulled up with the biggest smile, waving to me with the coolest decades-old brown leather jacket, which he did struggle to zip from time to time. Keep smiling, Papa, and we'll keep waving back. Love you.
Laura?
Dad, you embodied the spirit of life. You were not just my dad, but a vibrant force. So generous and kind, and someone who could light up any room with your presence. Your humor and love for telling jokes and stories was infectious, and your generosity knew no bounds. You taught me the importance of family, finding joy in giving to others, living life to the fullest, and making others smile. Your jokes never failed to bring laughter, and your kindness was felt by everyone. I always remember you spoke so proudly about Anne, Steve, and Aaron and their accomplishments since I can remember. Whether I heard you talking over the phone, out with other people, and most recently to the staff at the places you lived and to all the doctors' visits that I went with you. Always, all the time, so proud to talk about the family. I would sometimes get embarrassed when you would tell someone about my sports highlights from grade school or high school after 30 years. As we all know, you live to eat, and your love for food represented your desire to connect with others and celebrate life when having a meal with family and friends. I will never forget your favorite restaurants like the Flaming Pit and Jackson's Ice Cream in Florida, Stan's Blueberry Donuts, or the insanely large Nosher's Delight from Max and Benny's, as well as your love for ice cream as long as it came with extra whipped cream. I still remember your grocery requests and preferences, like getting toilet paper which had to be 2-ply Charmin Ultra Soft, or the tissue that had to be the long box of Puffs Plus 180 count, as anything less or more wasn't good because you had a method of folding that particular size tissue to put in your pocket. No wonder why some of us have OCD. However, the beautiful part is that you always carried the tissue for Mom, knowing she would need it. I'm grateful for every moment we shared and every memory we created together. Your legacy of love, laughter, family, and selflessness will live on. Most recently, it was the weekly visits, going to see you and Mom and waking you up from your naps and seeing the smile on your face. You always liked to drink water and would stop at the water fountain on the way to the dining room. And ironically enough, Idan and Adi said it's the best water fountain because of how cold the water was and the strong stream it had. It never dawned on me, but now I know why. I also drink tons of water every day, and I know it comes from you. Water represents life, and that is what you were all about, and you passed that along through the generations. Thank you for all you did for me growing up, and even when I was older and still in need of growing up. I was lucky to be your daughter. You meant the world to me. I love you, and you will always be in my heart.
finally, Anne.
Your life was a gift to us. You were kind, generous, and above all, a loving father, husband, and friend. Family was the cornerstone of your life. You cherished every moment you spent with us. You always supported us and celebrated our successes with deep pride. Home was a place where everyone felt welcome. Your warmth and humor were contagious. Your laughter, stories, and jokes brought smiles and joy. Growing up, hosting parties and gatherings was a regular event. Each gathering demonstrated your ability to bring people together and make them feel at home. An avid reader of mystery books, you loved the twists and turns of a good story, and ultimately unraveling the mystery before getting to the end of the book or movie. And in the case of the movie, it was problematic because it could be very frustrating when the rest of us hadn't figured out the movie's plot twist. You had a head for math and science. You loved solving riddles, brain twister puzzles, and games. Sometimes very quickly and sometimes not, but eventually you solved every one of them. You taught me strategy for playing board games and how to do math in my head, which occasionally still impresses some of my colleagues until today. I remember once I had a month-long homework assignment for math class to solve 100 story problems. And of course, one Sunday, the day before the assignment was due, I remembered I forgot to do it. Instead of getting angry, you were so excited that it was math, you enthusiastically sat with me at the dining room table for the entire day until we completed 100 story problems. In fact, growing up, I remember asking, why am I the only one of all my friends that don't have a curfew? You said, we can give you one if you'd like. The four of us were never really grounded or punished. That is until you realized how much Aaron loved peanut butter. And then could easily be threatened with no peanut butter for the day. But in actuality, just disappointing you felt to all of us like the worst punishment. You lived your life with integrity, honor, and humanity. You had a strong sense of loyalty that guided you through your life. We moved from Rogers Park to Highland Park when I was 7. I remember asking you why we lived in Highland Park but still belonged to Temple Emmanuel in the city when there were so many synagogues much closer to us. You told me that when you were first married and wanted to join a synagogue and didn't have enough money for Jews, the rabbi welcomed you into the Emmanuel community. And so you and Mom drove 45 minutes each way, twice a week, to Hebrew and religious school over 16 years for all four of us. Family and friends were the pillars of your world. Your friendships were lifelong bonds that you cherished and nurtured throughout your life. The connections you made with people were warm, and your ability to maintain these relationships over decades speaks to the depth of your character and heart. But the greatest legacy you leave behind is your capacity to love unconditionally. Your love was a place where we all felt safe and cherished. Your love was a gift that we will treasure forever. You were married to Bubby for 64 years and would still hold hands when watching TV. Thank you for everything you gave us. You were a light in our lives, and your memory shines brightly in our hearts. We love you and we'll miss you always.
Together today, we honor the life and the legacy of David Lanski. David's memory, as we've heard, is treasured most by his family. To David's brother Charles and his sister Elizabeth, who are unable to be here in person today, we wish you comfort from afar. To David's wife of 64 years, his beloved Sylvia, our hearts go out to you. And to David's 4 precious children, Anne, Steve, Aaron, and Laura, we wish you strength as you remember a man who was such a pillar in your lives. To David's children-in-law, Barry and Ariadna and Wendy, We know that you share this loss, and we wish you comfort. And to David's 8 treasured grandchildren, Idan, Adi, Leah, Ilan, Itan, Orly, Libi, and Liam, your papa loved you so much. We know he'll always be with you. David was born in Chicago in 1935. He was the son of Hyman and Ethel Lanski. David had 3 treasured siblings, Jean and Ronnie and Charles. David grew up on the west side of Chicago and attended Marshall High School. He played handball and softball with his siblings and his friends in the neighborhood. David was always social. In high school, he was the senior class president. David and his buddies were pranksters, always trading jokes and sinking out fun times. They used to go downtown to crash parties and weddings. David's parents gave him quite a bit of latitude to live his best life, to chart his own course and his own adventures. When David went to college, he started off in dental school, but after he made a snarky comment in Yiddish, which his teacher, to David's surprise, understood, that chapter came to an abrupt end. Nevertheless, David, an exceptionally bright young man, found his way academically at the University of Illinois, studying chemistry. It should be noted that David was an incredibly smart man. And as his children have shared, he was good with numbers and with words. David read, according to Aaron, about a 500-page book in about 24 hours. David's intelligence, his social skills, and his hard work served him well. Over the course of David's career, he worked in a variety of positions, most of them sales-related. As a people person with exceptional social skills, it was easy for him to connect to others. David worked as a chemical wholesaler. In fact, he worked with the person who came up with the idea of the lava lamp, and David personally developed the science behind that invention. Later, David worked at Silver Skillet, food processing plant in Skokie. David's work ethic was always strong. When he had a task, he put himself to it. He never missed a day of work. David spent much of his career working in textile-related businesses. He was proud to have served as the trade commissioner for the Midwest for the Israeli government in the 1980s. In that position, he generated more trade for Israel than any predecessor. His partnership with Kitan and with Carmel Carpets as their exclusive American partner was a career highlight. That's a taste of what David did. But who David was is another matter entirely. As we reflect on David's essential values, on his core commitments, and his larger-than-life existence, this week's Torah portion, Ki Tavo, gives us an insight into the light that David uniquely shone in our world. In our Parsha, the Torah teaches us about Bikurim, the first fruits that Jewish farmers would bring to Eretz Yisrael, to the Holy Land on Shavuot. The idea was to gather the first grapes of your vines, the first figs of your trees, the first barley from your field, and offer it joyfully to God in thanks for the miracle of life and abundance. Bikurim, first fruits, are at their core about generosity, about giving gifts to God, our first crops, with a full heart of gratitude. One of David's defining characteristics was his generosity. David was the kind of person who would give the shirt off his back to those he cared for. Sylvia has always said that David was the easiest person to live with, that she was lucky to be married to him, and that he had overflowing generosity. David lived to give to others. He carried tissues in his pocket, as we heard, because Sylvia's nose was dripping. David would always buy Sylvia new jewelry, balloons, flowers, and on Valentine's Day, chocolates. He lived for giving gifts. In the course of an evening together, at one point or another, all 4 of David's children, separately, described their father as generous. It's appropriate that we remember David when we recall Bikurim. Giving was at his core. Bikurim also represents a kind of joie de vivre, a zest for life. When the Bikurim, the sources of wine and cake, food and drink, were brought to Israel, the Mishnah tells us they were paraded in with flowers and music and animals and total aplomb. The season of giving Bikurim was like the Jewish people's block party. It was a moment of living life to the fullest. And boy, was that David. David lived life with zest, and he knew how to celebrate. Anne recalled how David always had extended family over at the house. He loved hosting parties and barbecues. David would make the drinks, and his children would be the servers. He was always fun and funny. He wanted to make sure others were happy. Aaron remembered how Dad would give full pool-length submarine rides on his back. Ariadna described David as social and gregarious. Ilan mentioned how Papa was always the one making jokes at family gatherings. David had a great sense of humor. Leah talked about the lengths that Papa would go to make life funny and silly. For example, the stories of Ollie the alligator, who lived in the Florida bathtub and would mysteriously leave town just before the grandkids arrived for a visit. Lee B talked about Papa going to Disney World and getting on rides even though they made him dizzy, and how he would play hide and seek and steal her nose. Liam remembered how Papa would play Uno and go fish, even if Papa didn't let him win. And one way that David loved life, that everyone has already mentioned, is food. David loved food. The pizza eating contests were memorable, to say the least. Eitan and Orly remembered the Asian restaurant where they would go to for dinners. Papa loved going out to dinner. And if David was offering Bikurim in the temple, his most precious first fruits, I'm pretty sure it would have been ice cream. The huge ice cream scoops in Hollywood, Florida were epic. David's joie de vivre perhaps can be best encapsulated by one of the lines that Adi repeated. There is no such thing as too much whipped cream. At this season, the Bikurim remind us to live life to the fullest, with music and dance, and food and drink. And David loved life. He ate it up. And in doing so, he taught all of those around him to make the most of every moment. But on a deeper level, Bikurim remind us of the value of family. When our ancestors would offer the first fruits in Jerusalem, they would recite the phrase we famously hear quoted in the Haggadah. My father was a wandering Aramean. Arameo Vedavi. The first fruits were enjoyed with family and were lifted up in memory of family. Family comes first. And David Lanski believed in family above all else. When asked about the values that spoke to David's deepest essence, every single person, to a T, said family. And family began with Sylvia. David and Sylvia met on a blind date in 1960. And from that proposal at Trader Vic's, it was love at first sight. David and Sylvia never argued and never yelled. The only spat, a lifelong back and forth, was the temperature on the thermostat. David worked very hard to provide for his family, which means he wasn't always around. But when he was crystal clear that, as Steve said, family comes first. David's care for his kids was shown in the way he so desperately wanted what was best for them. For example, Steve recalls how Dad would encourage them to finish college, go to professional school, and have a backup plan. He wanted his kids' lives to be easier than his own. Laura recalled how Dad would do everything he could think of to help her overcome her fear of thunderstorms. At the end of the day, David loved his children. He cared about them more than anything. And that circle of love extended to their partners. Barry recalls how David would make him feel welcome right away. How they would sit and talk about the issues, about the pain in the world, about his love for being Jewish and for Israel. Barry said of David, he was a human being in a world that wasn't so human. Ariadna and Wendy both recalled how David bought them steamers to keep in their homes. And there were two purposes. Number one, he wanted them to enjoy perfectly pressed clothes, just like he did. And number two, he wanted to make sure that he was prepared to visit as often as possible, because what he wanted to do was to be with his family. Wendy recalled how David would always hold the kids and get down on the floor to play with them. He loved his family. And no question that Papa's love of family and his love of sports came together. He encouraged sports like teaching Idan that to beat his brother in basketball, you should 1, step on his toes, and 2, pants him. And he loved watching sports with his kids and grandkids, even if he did fall asleep sometimes, especially in his red chair. When our ancestors offered bikurim, they gave thanks for family, the children they could feed, and the ancestors, the wandering Arameans who came before them. And David Lanski lived for family. This week we reflect on the ancient ritual of bikurim, of offering first fruits. David Lanski lived this rite in his very bones. He was generous to a fault. He lived life with zest and joy and abandon. And he always put family first. David Lanski was loyal and honest, hardworking and funny, kind and good. He lived life well. As Barry said, he was an ish yashar, an upright man. Zecher tzadik livracha. The memory of a righteous person is a blessing. David's life was righteous, and his memory is a blessing. Al mekomo yavo b'shalom. May he find peace in his final resting place. Amen. Please rise if you're able. We'll say the El Malay Rachamim, praying that God will shelter David.
חמסי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע את נשמת דוד בן חיים ואסתר שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן תהי מנוחתו בעל הרחמים הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו ואנוך בשלום על משכבו ונאמר
Mass in the hand. O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of thy presence, among the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament, unto the soul of David Robert Lanski, who is gone unto eternity. Lord of mercy, bring him under the cover of thy wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life, be God's possession, and may his repose be peace. And we can say Amen. If you have a seat, you can have a seat. We come from dust and we return to dust. At the moment of burial, of returning to the earth, we have some earth from the land of Israel. We'll place that on David's casket before it's lowered. We're going to invite two of his grandchildren, Ilan and Orly Lanski, to place this earth from Israel on David's casket. The gentleman will now lower the coffin.
הצור תמים בלו, כי כל דרכיו משפט, אל אמונה ואין עוול, צדיק וישר הוא. הצור תמים בכל פועל, מי יאמר לו מה תפעל, השליט במטה ובמעל, ממית ומחיה, מוריד שיעור ויעל. הצור תמים בכל מעשה, מי יאמר לו מה תעשה, האומר ועושה חסד, חינם לנו תעשה, ובזכות הנקת כסד, הקשיבה ועשה. צדיק בכל דרכיו, הצור תמים, ערך אפיים ומלא רחמים, חמל נא וחוס נא לאבות ובנים, כי לך אדון הסליחות והרחמים. צדיק אתה אדוני לעמית ולחיות, אשר בידך פקדון כרוחות. הלילה לך זכרננו, למחות ויונה, עיניך ברחמים עלינו, פקוחות כי לך אדון הרחמים והסליחות. אדם אם בן שנה יהיה או 1000 שנים יחיה, מה יתרון לו כלא היה יהיה. ברוך דיין האמת, ממית ומחיה, ברוך הוא כי אמת דינו, ומשותת הכל בעינו, ומשלם לאדם חשבונו ודינו, והכל לשמו הודיה ייתנו. ידענו אדוני כי צדק משפטיך, תצדק בדברך, ותזכה בשופטיך, ואין להרהר אחד מדעת שופטיך. צדיק אתה אדוני וישר משפטיך. אדוני נתן ואדוני לקח, יהי שם אדוני מבורך. הוא רחום יכפר עוון ולא ישחית, והרבה להשיב אפו ולא יאיר כל חמתו. ידענו אדוני כי צדק משפטך, תצדק בדברכך, ותזכה בשופטיך ולהרהר אחת מידת. צדיק אדוני אדוני, וישר משפטך, דיין אמת שופט צדק באמת. ברוך דיין אמת, שכל משפטיו צדק ואמת. נפש כל חי בידך, צדק מלא ימינך, רחם על פליטת צאן ידך, ותאמר למלאכה חרף ידך. גדול העצה ורבך עלילה, אשר עיניך פקוחות על כל דרכי בני אדם, לתת לאיש כדרכיו וכפרי מעלליו. להגיד כי ישר אדוני, צורי ולא עוולת בו. אדוני נתן ואדוני לקח, יהי שם אדוני מבורך. והוא רחום יכפר עוון ולא ישחית, והרבה להשיב אפו ולא יאיר כל חמתו. עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. ואמרו אמן. שיר למעלות, אשא עיני אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי. עזרי מעם אדוני, עושה שמיים וארץ. אל ייתן למות רגלך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא יישן שומר ישראל. אדוני שומרך, אדוני צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יכך, הירח בלילה. אדוני ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם.
A song for ascents. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Adonai will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your protection, a guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm and guard your life. Adonai guards your going and coming, now and forever. The mitzvah of burial in our tradition is called Chesed Shel Emet. It's the truest act of kindness, because it's in this moment that we have the ability to do something for David with no expectation of anything in return, just our love. And so we see that David is buried by those he loved as a sign of respect, beginning with the children and then the immediate family and then all others. Everyone will be offered an opportunity to participate in the burial. It's traditional to place 3 shovels full of earth into the grave. The tradition is to do the first shovelful with the backside of the shovel, showing that we're hesitant, this is non-normative, we don't wish to do this, and the other 2 the normal way, and then to place the shovel back into the pile for the next person. We'll begin with Sylvia, with Laura, with Anne, with Stephen, with Aaron, as we show David this final act of love and honor.
Some water. Get your number.
Ariadna, Wendy, Barry, grandchildren.
And if you're careful, you can come forward on either side.
Everyone else, you can come right behind the family.
It's fresh. It's fresh. Yeah, it's new. It's new. Okay.
If there's anyone else that would like to come forward, we would invite you to do so at this time.
I really did it. This is for me.
Yeah, we had.
לכן שמח ליבי ויגל כבודי אף בשרי ישכון לבטח כי לא תעזוב נפשי לישון לא תיתן חסידך לראות שוחט וירח בלילה לאורך חיים סובה שמחו את פניך עמו במנחה יצא הודיעני אורח חיים אורח חיים Nai, 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 nai.
We have seen that David is buried with respect by the people he loves and with the people he loves. And now we move from the mitzvah of Kvod Hamet, of honoring the deceased, to the mitzvah of Nichum Avelim, to that of comforting the mourners. And so we'll join the mourners in their first Kaddish. The words of Kaddish are found on the back page. And we'll join Anne and Laura, Steve and Aaron and Sylvia as they say Kaddish for the first time. Please rise if you're able. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah Be'alma divra kirtei yamlich malchutei B'chayechon u'yomechon u'chayei dechol beit Yisrael Ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru Amen Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam omei almaya Yitbarach v'ishtabach v'itpa'ar v'itramam v'itnaseh Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shemei Dekudsha, Brechu, Le'ela, Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata, Tushbechata V'Nechemata, Da'amiran Be'alma V'imru Amen, Yehi Shlamat Rabba Min Shemaya, V'Chaim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen, Oseh Shalom B'imrumav, U'ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Everyone who's here, you can turn yourselves towards the mourners, towards those in the front row, and we'll say these words of comfort to Sylvia and Laura, Anne and Steve and Aaron. You can repeat after me. Hamakom Yenachem Etchem Betoch Sha'ar Avilei Tzion V'Yerushalayim. May God comfort you amongst all the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Thank you, everybody.
Amen. Friends, this concludes the services here at the graveside, and you may return to your cars. Just as a reminder, and on the service folder, the family will be together for Shiva at the Lanski residence at 2446 North Jansen Street in Chicago from 5 until 8:30, and again tomorrow from 5 until 8:30 with a minyan at 7 o'clock. And then on Thursday at the Lanski and Chazan residence in Deerfield, also from 5 to 8:30 with minyan at 7, and Friday from 1 until 4.